real hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight,
We'll now turn to the sentence. Would you stand, please?
Big Brother is watching prison for social media posts and... football fans labelled as far-right. Is this the demonstration, or demonisation, I should say, of the working class? Also...
We're proud of Londoners who came together united against racism, Islamophobia and anti-Semitism. We've got to recognise, though, the far right's not gone away.
So Khan says that he doesn't feel safe.
I don't know whether the future for me and my wife and my 3 children is going to be here in Scotland or the United Kingdom, or indeed in Europe.
And Hamza Yusuf might flee the country, but...
What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Yo! What are you doing?
It's not just ethnic minorities who don't feel safe in Britain, is it? Also tonight...
setting out a radical plan to not only get the homes we desperately need, but also drive the growth.
Labour is about to turn a sleepy village into a megacity. Will this happen where you live? And there's been a deadly plane crash in Brazil. Plus...
you can have it as well, you
one council is going to fine you for swearing in public. Well, they can... Oh, yeah, and what's going on there? On my panel tonight is ex-BBC and ITV political chief John Sargent and political commentator and broadcaster Alex Armstrong. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Is the state going to lock you up for your Facebook posts? Next.
Patrick, thank you and good evening. The top stories. Buckingham Palace says His Majesty the King has praised the way community spirit and compassion have countered the aggression and criminality on display during the riots. King Charles had been in phone conversations tonight with the Prime Minister and police chiefs. Also, Keir Starmer has reiterated that police should remain on high alert going into the weekend. That says earlier, a 30-year-old man was jailed for 8 months for racially aggravated intentional harassment during the riots in Leeds. The judge said his sentence was reduced to take his guilty plea into account. Meanwhile, a Facebook user who urged people to attack a Leeds hotel used to house asylum seekers was also jailed today. 28-year-old Jordan Parlour was sentenced to 20 months after pleading guilty to publishing written material intended to stir racial hatred. Former Labour councillor Ricky Jones has been remanded in custody after appearing in court on charges of encouraging violent disorder at a rally organised by Stand Up to Racism. Jones was filmed addressing a crowd at the London demonstration on Wednesday evening. The 57-year-old was charged at Westminster Magistrates Court, which heard he gave a speech to a crowd which was capable of encouraging or assisting the commission of violent disorder. Plea and trial preparation has been set for the 6th of September. The Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, has claimed he doesn't feel safe as an openly Muslim politician following the riots. Asked by reporters if he felt at risk during the riots given his religion, he said, "Clearly I'm not safe, which is why I've got police protection." The Mayor expressed alarm at recent events, comparing them to the racial tensions he faced growing up in the 1970s and 80s. As you've been hearing, there are no survivors after a plane carrying 62 people plummeted into a residential area just north of Sao Paulo in Brazil. That's according to local authorities. And if you're watching us on television now, you can see this footage of the plane drifting downward and spiralling as it falls, crashing through trees and breaking into a plume of smoke. The state's fire brigade has confirmed that 7 crews have been dispatched to the crash site. The airline Vopas says there were 58 passengers and 4 crew members on board that flight. There are no survivors. And disgraced former BBC News presenter Hugh Edwards has been asked to return his salary by the corporation's board. It comes after the 62-year-old admitted in court last week to having indecent images of children. 7 of the 41 images were described as being in the most serious category of child abuse pictures and videos. The BBC's board has told him to repay his salary from the time he was arrested in November last year, saying the presenter undermined trust in the BBC and brought it into disrepute. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good evening. We are living in very, very scary times.
We have some breaking news now, and a woman has been arrested by Cheshire Police in relation to an inaccurate information on social media about the attacker in the Southport murders.
A woman arrested for social media posts and...
In your case, Samir Ali, for the offence of affray, the sentence is 20 months imprisonment. In your case, Adnan Ghafoor, for the offence of affray, the sentence is 18 months imprisonment.
On top of those sentences, today some other people have been given whopping great big terms in prison for social media posts. Now, I want to make it clear that those people sent to prison so far did say some vile things online. And given the context of everything going on, many people will think that they deserve prison. But some people are making the point that there were members of grooming gangs who have received lesser prison sentences. But I am worried about where we're heading.
Over 400 people now have been arrested, 100 have been charged, some in relation to online activity, and a number of them are already in court. And I'm now expecting substantive sentencing before the end of this week. That should send a very powerful message to anybody involved, either directly or online.
So we have a Prime Minister there, don't we, appearing to tell judges to dish out long prison sentences. And...
Because let's be very clear about this. It's not protest. It's not legitimate. It's crime. Violent disorder, an assault on the rule of law and the execution of justice.
Now, he wants to be able to define himself what is and is not a proper protest. And we've also got the Director of Public Prosecutions saying this.
The offence of incitement to racial hatred involves publishing or distributing material which is insulting or abusive, which is intended to or likely to start racial hatred. So if you retweet that, then you're republishing that, and then potentially you're committing that offence.
Well, he's essentially suggesting there that you could be arrested for simply retweeting protest footage. And after London Mayor Sadiq Khan said he doesn't feel safe in London as a Muslim and he wants tougher online laws, what does Starmer do?
In relation to online and social media, the first thing I'd say is this is not a law-free zone. And I think that's clear from the prosecutions and sentencing. Today we're due sentencing for online behaviour. That's a reminder to everyone that whether you're directly involved or whether you're remotely involved, you're culpable and you will be put before the courts if you've broken the law.
It's all well and good locking people up for sending out death threats or genuinely inciting criminality. The far right does exist, they need to be dealt with, but my concern is this. Instead of dealing with immigration and illegal immigration, this Labour government will introduce very, very subjective and draconian laws to scare people into silence. Let's get the thoughts of my panel tonight. It's former BBC and ITV chief political correspondent, it's John Sargent. We're also joined by a political commentator and broadcaster, Alex Armstrong. John, I'll start with you. Yeah, my concern is that what we are seeing here now is a rush to scare people into potentially not saying what they really feel online.
No, there's an element of that. You're quite right. I mean, obviously what you don't want to do is to overreact, but you also want to make sure that violence doesn't pay. Now, that's going to be very difficult because there's a sort of cycle about this, is that people then think, I want to go on there, I want to show my feelings. And they show their feelings, but it then involves violence, which never pays in British politics. It just doesn't. So if the issue then becomes not immigration or cost of living or anything else, but if it becomes a straightforward law and order issue, then people say, look, I can't stand this. I can't leave my home. People are frightened. It's such an important issue that you can then talk about all sorts of other issues in normal times. But if it becomes abnormal, and riots, real riots in Britain, they're very abnormal. You may say, oh, they go on in France and other places. We're not used to it. We then tend to, and this is probably what's happened on this occasion, if anything, we overreact to it. But, you know, I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry that people then feel, look, this is the smack of firm government. It's an old cry in Britain. From the 1950s, the smack of firm government.
I am not diminishing for a single second that what some of the people who were sentenced today were sent down for was, you know, one of them put an emoji of an ethnic minority and a gun, right? OK, I get that. That's wrong. The other aspect of this, I will say, though, is all of this talk about we're coming for your social media, we're going to look at your social media, we're going to do all of this stuff, even down to quite subjective things, like if you retweeted a video of a protest that was going on from a purely news capacity. And someone looks at that and then they go to that protest and they kick off. Have you then incited it? If someone accidentally shares something, like about genuinely accidentally shares something about they think that something's going on, stay safe, stay inside because this is happening. And that was, I just think, Alex, that this government is going to do anything it possibly can to not deal with the reason why people are angry, which is illegal immigration and actually, you know, crime that goes with that on the streets.
Yeah, well, we saw Keir Starmer have the opportunity to address that. A journalist asked him, now that the riots have calmed down, will you have a conversation with people who have genuine concerns about immigration? And he said nothing. He deflected it. So we know the answer is going to be no. He doesn't want to talk about that because it's not in his narrative or his ideology. I am deeply, deeply fearful that this country is heading down its worst Orwellian nightmare. 40 years after George Orwell predicted it, we've got people being locked up for posts they put on social media or for retweeting, potentially retweeting material which is concerning to them, and they want to express their concern by talking about it. It is in human nature to speculate on events, Patrick. This is not against human nature. What the government want to do is censor that.
What I want to say to this, John, is I think the timing of this is quite interesting. So, yes, OK, we have massive social disorder going on, and there was the risk for escalation, and that needed to be stopped. But what else are Labour currently planning on doing? There's this Operation Scatter going on. There's a massive home building programme going on. Both of those things could well result in people in local, especially rural or currently quiet communities, having to take a large number of people, quite possibly a large number of people who are either asylum seekers or have recently been granted asylum or who are new here in whatever capacity that is. And I think that the timing of this now, scaring people for saying you can't be posting stuff about this on social media, being deliberately ambiguous about what you can and can't say on social media, could well work to try to silence ordinary people who want to express their concerns about that.
Yeah, no, I think there's something in there, particularly after the shock for many people of the election result, where suddenly, having thought, oh, it's all about sort of Conservatives arguing amongst themselves, and suddenly they realise that not only has there been a change in government, but the Conservative government has been almost wiped out electorally. I mean, I'm exaggerating to make the point. That is unnerving for lots of people. And I think, what is this? If that's unnerving, what are they, the government, the new government, what are they going to do? Who are these people? And people are not used to it because 14 years have passed and so on. They're not used to the idea that, oh, it's OK, don't worry, this is what you're used to. And that means we're a very unstable period. Now, from the government's point of view, from Starmer's point of view, what obviously they're worried about is that people think, oh, we're just sort of floppy liberals, we'll just say yes to everybody, will agree to the public sector pay rise, we'll agree with that, we don't want to upset anybody. No, there comes a point when you're in government where you've got to act tough, and they are acting tough. John, and you can't then turn around and say, oh, we don't want you to act tough.
I'm sorry, but there is also the argument that actually, over history, people who are actually very far left are also incredibly authoritarian.
So are people on the right.
Yeah, they are, fine, but we've got people who are on the left at the moment.
And quite, the point you originally made there, Patrick's really interesting, which is, are they setting the stage for policy that allows them to clamp down on people protesting immigrant cities? Is what we're talking about. People, like what we're seeing in Ireland, where people are protesting actively, violently in some cases, because their cities and towns have been overwhelmed or doubled in size. That is deeply concerning, and this would be if I were perhaps a little bit pessimistic, this would be the perfect opportunity to put those laws in now, saying you cannot speculate online. In fact, if you speculate at all, you'll get a knock from the Met. That, to me, is deeply, deeply concerning, and it says something about Keir Starmer's intention and this government's intention. If we look at what they're planning next with Islamophobia laws, it seems to me like the narrative is quite clear.
Well, that's something we're going to talk about later. I'll say, look, we are engaging in a hypothetical conversation there. We're looking at the situation now, and what we're trying to do is have a discussion about where this goes in future or where it could go. And we'll have to wait and see. As it currently stands, Keir Starmer has to have the benefit of the doubt. But I think it's right to raise concerns about the potential of this.
No, of course it's right. And, of course, there is a danger of the government overreacting, particularly when it seems so quickly they've gone from the whole country's aflame to, my God, there are no protests taking place.
Is it right? When you look at this now, again, I want to emphasise some of those things that people have been banged up for today. We're awful, yeah, all right. But if this keeps going on, you end up with Marjorie from number 47, who's shared something on a community Facebook page, and you know, because people do this stuff.
Sure,
they do. People are taken in by it.
No, I agree.
And they do that. Yeah. But then you look at things, you know, there have been members of grooming gangs who've not gone to prison.
Sure, no, and you can't sort out all the ills of society after 3 or 4 weeks of a new government. You can't do that, certainly. But what you've got to do is that there are some things that you really should regard as being beyond the pale, and that is violent protests, innocent people being forced to stay at home, and all these other things. We can do all sorts of other things. We can argue about all sorts of things. We can argue about immigration, cost of living, who should be in the government, what the government have done wrong. We can do all that. But if you get into a position where violence pays, then it is the 1930s, and it's Germany. It's groups of extremists fighting each other in the streets.
You're not wrong. We should always condone, we should always be against violence in any shape or form of rioting, right? The problem is that Keir Starmer is not addressing the thousands of peaceful protesters who have had enough. 14 years of electing governments that said we're going to lower immigration. We've had Brexit. We said we're going to lower and take back control. They feel betrayed by the elites.
Of course, Alex.
They feel betrayed by the elite
Be aware
class.
of this, though. If Keir Starmer had said, look, I understand all this. You know, I really do. If people are very upset about immigration. We're all upset about immigration. Immigration has become a really difficult issue for everyone in the country for many years.
It's now the number one issue. It's now the number one.
Right. No, but it varies sometimes, it's cost of living and other thing. But the idea that somehow or other what he can do is just say, look, I understand. There's a famous quote from John Major, and he says, people understand too much, they don't condemn enough. And there's something in that too.
Look, so I'm just going to leave us with this, and this is the exact example that I am very worried about happening. So, a few months' time or a year's time, there's a migrant hotel or there's some kind of new housing development or an old disused care home in a relatively remote area, and they decide, right, this is part of Operation Scatter. We're going to put 60, 100, probably men in that area, right? And then the locals get wind of this, and it goes round in a community group, and then, well, should we demonstrate against this? Because that's the traditional way of showing. They're not talking about burning it down. They're not talking about attacking anyone. They're talking about standing outside with placards, all right? What happens in that situation? Does the government look at that and think there's the potential there for that to escalate? Are they potentially running the risk of inciting something? Do we go after those people? And that, I think, is a very big worry. And I think what we're seeing now might actually try to stop those people.
But every senior policeman has that problem almost all the time. They've got to assess this. You're absolutely right. But at that particular moment, the example you're giving, the police then are saying, well, wait a moment, are we overdoing it? Well, is it going to be a peaceful demonstration?
That hasn't been the case, though. That hasn't been the case in certain areas where people are allowed to self-police. And that's where are people allowed to self-police in this example? We haven't seen that. I don't know who my community leader is, actually. I need to check and find out who my community leader is before I can get their permission to self-police.
No, come on.
No, but this is true,
Look,
John. We can pretend it's not
don't
true,
be
but it
so
is true.
pessimistic about our country that you give
I'm
the
not
impression...
pessimistic.
No,
I'm just
you
looking
are.
at the facts.
Both of you are being pessimistic.
Oh, come on, John. All right. OK, look, thank you. Good start. Great stuff. And like I said before, you know, we're going to have to wait and see how this thing goes. I don't want to say, you know, this is what's definitely happening. I think it's right to raise concerns about it at this early juncture, and then hopefully it doesn't happen. Anyway, coming up, Labour's eyeing up a tiny village in Bedfordshire as a candidate for a massive housing development that could see the village transformed into a city larger than Oxford. But are they ignoring the concerns of local residents? And frankly, is this going to happen to where you live? But next, a Tory peer has slammed Labour's plans to remove winter fuel payments for almost 10 million pensioners. But with bumper pay rises for junior doctors, more money to accommodate asylum seekers as well, are Labour robbing Britain's most vulnerable to appease the unions and house small boat arrivals? Former Tory MP Edwina Currie goes head-to-head with former Labour Party advisor Mike Buckley. You don't want to miss it.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
You'll relate to this one. We've all been there, haven't we? Tensions high in the car as you head off on the latest adventure or holiday during the summer break.
Now, with the average family set to spend about 3.5 hours a week together in the car driving on the roads during the holidays, new research has shown that our relationships could be tested to the limit.
Yes, figures show that 21% are having arguments for simple things like the driver going the wrong way, which we were saying is not actually very simple. That's very simple.
I was going to say that. I'm surprised it's just 21%. Yeah. So if I was going the wrong way down the road,
you'd know about
you'd hear from me.
A further 20% squabbling over how their partner drives, yes, and 25% admitting to being more prone to rowing when their kids are misbehaving. It's a lot to deal with, isn't it?
Fair enough.
Well, we're joined now by dating and relationship coach and author Persia Lawson. Good to see you this morning, Persia. What is it about being in a car that just makes things so tense?
Well, I think it's probably quite obvious, isn't it? It's the fact that we are in a confined space, we can't go anywhere, and it can just really create so much tension and stress, especially if you and your other half or a family member, whoever you're in the car with, are going through a little bit of a tricky time. And if it's really hot outside, that doesn't help either. So inevitably, it creates a lot of irritation and bickering, I would say, from my experience.
And what is it about children? If you add children into the mix, it just makes things very, very difficult, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, because there's a lot of, are we there yet?
Yeah.
Kicking the back seat and just squabbles, kicking the siblings. So adding children into the mix is just going to turn the heat up on that tension.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Patrick Christys Tonight. Coming up, are Labour ignoring the concerns of ordinary Brits in its bid to build thousands of new homes? And crucially, who's going to live in those homes? But first, is Keir Starmer robbing pensioners to appease trade unions and house small boat arrivals? It's time for the head-to-head. So a former Conservative pensions minister has sounded the alarm on Labour's plans to remove winter fuel payments from nearly 10 million pensioners, branding the policy worse than ditching the triple lock. Under plans announced by Rachel Reeves last week, only those receiving pension credit or other benefits will receive support with their energy bills. But Baroness Altman, who served as pensioner minister under David Cameron, has lashed out, saying, "I do hope the government will recognise that this is not right. It will cause real hardship and needs to be urgently reconsidered. Saving the £1.4 billion this year by making pensioners pay for the fiscal overspend is a political choice. And in my view, it's the wrong one." Indeed, speaking of political choices, Altman's intervention comes after Labour agreed to an astonishing 22.3% pay rise for junior doctors, which is predicted to cost the Treasury billions. And there's also warnings that the government's plan to scatter migrants across the country and house them in empty properties will end up costing billions as well. So tonight I'm asking, is Keir Starmer robbing pensioners to appease the unions and accommodate small boat arrivals? Going head-to-head on this now are former Tory MP Edwina Currie and former Labour advisor Mike Butley. Both of you, look, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. Edwina, I'll start with you on this. Is Keir Starmer robbing pensioners here?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a ridiculous state of affairs, in my judgment, when we not only lose our winter fuel payments, all of us, every single one, whether we're rich or poor or whoever we are, we lose our winter fuel payments unless we're on pensioner credit, but we still can't get a GP appointment. And the waiting lists, if you go to A&E, which older people are much more likely to do, the waiting times there are still horrendous. I mean, if there was an element of balance, one could understand it. But of course, what's going to happen, Patrick, is more people are going to apply for pensioner credit. A lot more people will apply for pensioner credit. And that means that the gain to the government of cutting our winter fuel payments will be diminished. It's likely to be really not worth their while in terms of money, but very badly against their interests in terms of votes.
OK, Mike, great to have you back on the show, by the way, but I'll ask you the same question. Is Keir Starmer robbing pensioners here to pay for other stuff like small boat arrivals and like the unions?
Well, no, of course he's not. And it's, I mean, it's disingenuous of Edwina to blame the government that's been empowered for a month for the fact that you can't get a GP appointment and there are long queues in A&E. We know that, and West Street says on a daily basis that he's working as hard as he can to fix the NHS, which has been broken over 14 years by Edwina's party. In terms of the winter fuel payments, it is fairly ludicrous to pay every pensioner in the country hundreds of pounds every year, money that they don't need. And I speak to pensioners, and I hear by my mum of lots of other pensioners who just don't need that finance and, in fact, would rather it went to a better home. And many of them are, in fact, grateful for the fact that the government have done what they've done. There may need to be an adjustment. I think I'm aware of that. There's clearly that cohort of people who are just above the pension credit threshold and may need some additional help. So I do wonder whether the government will take some action in the future to address the needs of those people. And indeed, the government has been very, very clear that they want people to apply for pension credit if they're eligible so that people get the support that they need.
Edwina, do you think this... Go on, go on.
I was going to say, Patrick, there's about 2 million people. It's estimated about 2 million pensioners would be eligible for pensioner credit if they actually claimed it, but are actually too proud to do so or don't want to get involved in all the shenanigans and applying and all the rest of it. And if even a proportion of those, has been pointed out today, if even a proportion of those, like, say, about 500,000 applied for pensioner credit instead, not only would they then get the pensioner credit, which they don't get at the moment, but they would also then get the winter fuel payment, which the government's trying to save in order, as Patrick rightly says, to spend it on other things. So it's going to be, you know, if I were the pensions minister, I wouldn't have even given this 5 minutes thought. It's a bad idea. It's a cruel idea to start putting pensioners very much in the forefront of the knife that you're trying to wield. We face enough difficulties as it is when you get to 85 or whatever. We can't go out to work like people of your generation. You're the ones that should be paying the extra tax, and we should be able to benefit from a long, long life of doing the right thing and paying our taxes.
Now, you raise a good point there, which I'll put to you, Mike, which is a question of fairness. So if you've got people who have done the right thing all their lives, who've paid into the tax system all their lives, worked all their lives, maybe even worked in the public sector all their lives as a nurse or as whatever, who find themselves in retirement for whatever reason with not a huge amount of money, etc., Why should they be clobbered when people who are younger, starting out, junior doctors, or even people who are trained drivers, or people who work in the civil service, or whatever it is, or, dare I say it as well, Mike, people who have literally just arrived in this country, why should the pensioners be the ones to suffer there? Is that not deeply unfair?
Well, firstly, I mean, you mentioned asylum seekers and the money that's needed to pay for accommodation. I mean, as we all know, Rishi Sunak effectively shut down the asylum system last year, which meant that we now have about 80,000 people stacked up in the asylum system waiting to have their claims heard. Labour is now starting to hear those claims. £6.4 billion of money that we all paid in tax got paid unnecessarily on asylum seeker accommodation because Rishi Sunak was refusing to process claims. That is an absolute
But I think the argument, Mike, with respect, is that Labour are about to house those people permanently, right? I think that's the argument, isn't it? So that's going to cost us.
Once their claims are heard, if they're given refugee status, they're then on their own. They're given 28 days, and they then need to go into the community and find somewhere to get a job like anybody else. If their claims are rejected, the government then tries to return them to where they came to. There is, of course, a cohort of people that can't be returned, and the government then needs to work out what to do that. But the majority of them, 2/3 of them, the government says, effectively, even under the last government, you are a genuine refugee, go and live your life, but you're on your own, effectively. So therefore, they're no longer benefiting from the state.
That's not true, though, is it, Mike, to be fair? Because they will go, if they are at imminent risk of homelessness, which a lot of people will be, if they're about to leave detention centres or hotels, they will be bumped to the top of the housing waiting list, which means that they are very likely to take up social housing and even the lower end of the rental stock. And this just...
They are not bumped to the top of the housing waiting list.
It's done on urgent need. It's done on urgent need. Right, it's done on urgent need.
If they are made homeless, then yes, they're housed by the local council, just as anybody else will be housed if they were made homeless, because they're then just a member of society, same as anybody else. But in terms of the government's expenditure and the government's need, I mean, the government was left an appalling economic outcome by the last government. £20 billion black hole in the finances that had to be dealt with somehow. Rachel Reeves was dealt with it in the best way that she can. When we get to the budget in October, we will see what her plans are for the future.
OK, Edwina, go on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if Mike has noticed, but actually the Labour government won an election now quite a number of weeks ago, and much of the black hole he's talking about has been made by them promising all this extra money to their trade union friends, some of whom are still on strike, including in the health service. It's an absolute disgrace. They can't keep blaming a previous government. They're in charge now. They've got a huge majority. They're all on holiday. They could actually do a proper job, and actually bringing down that axe on pensioners and on the money that people need in the coming winter, I think, is deeply wrong, very cruel, and it will come back to bite them. I'm sure of that.
Edwina, can I ask you, I wonder, Edwina, whether or not they feel like they can get away with this, because pensioners can't go on strike, can they?
No, but we vote, as we will do in the next election. I bet this government is going to lose support and popularity faster than any previous government in recent times. It's already happening to Keir Starmer, and it will happen to the government. So what they'll find is they've got majority in Parliament and an awful lot of very unhappy people in the country, including militant pensioners. All
right, very final word to you on this, Mike, then. Look, do you think Keir Starmer really seriously here is that when winter comes and we start hearing stories about people in their 80s shivering in their own homes and it's being blamed on him, can he live with that?
I mean, as we've said, there are a lot of people out there who need to apply for pension credit, and then they will get that, and they'll get the winter fuel allowance on top. Right. I think there may be a cohort of people just above the pension tax credit threshold who may need additional help, but that's what I think rather than what Rachel Reeves or the government has said. Your comment earlier on, which I don't think I responded to, about pensioners and younger people needing to pay their fair share. One of the real successes in the last 20 years of our country under Labour and under the last Conservative government was taking a lot of pensioners out of poverty. The triple lock in particular made a huge difference. There are still pensioners that are poor, of course, but actually poverty now generally resides in the working population, and particularly, of course, among children, because of the two-child benefit. So it's only right that money is redirected elsewhere to resolve that larger problem.
All right, both of you, thank you very much. Great stuff, that. And no doubt we'll talk about this again in the future. So Weena Curry there and Mike Butley, thank you. Coming up, with the police braced for more violent clashes over the weekend, apparently, the Prime Minister's laid down the law to football fans.
Cobra meetings, that's why I've been talking to the police today about their plans for the weekend. Yes, football is added into the mix. There are other things.
But look, this suggestion that there's a crossover between the far-right extremists and football fans, is this just a blatant attack on the white working class? England football legend Harry Redknapp will be live with us in just a few minutes, but coming up, Labour's got its sights set on a tiny Bedfordshire village for a massive housing development that could transform it into a city larger than Oxford. Is this a sign of things to come? Could this happen to where you live? I'm joined by the chairman of Tempsford Parish Council. He's not letting his village go down without a fight. It's next.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather coming to you from the Met Office. Things are going to hot up as we go through, particularly the latter part of this weekend, especially in the southeast. But before then, tomorrow will be a bit cloudy and a bit damp for some of us because we are going to see a bit of a frontal wave pushing its way in, and that's going to lead to increasing amounts of cloud as we go through the rest of this evening and overnight. But ahead of that, some clearer skies, and we're going to cling on to the clearer skies across eastern parts, but all the time a few showers across parts of Scotland, still pushing through on relatively brisk winds. In the west, where we have that cloud and that rain feeding in, temperatures aren't going to drop much. A bit fresher, though, towards eastern parts where we have some clearer skies. So that cloud and any outbreaks of rain will gradually make their way eastwards across England and Wales as we go through the day tomorrow. So whilst eastern parts will start off the day quite bright, it is going to turn a bit grey later on, and watch out for some heavy rain over the hills towards the west as well. A brighter start a bit further north, lots of fine weather for Northern Ireland, just a few showers, similar for northwest England. Whilst across Scotland there'll be quite a few showers around, perhaps something a little bit more persistent for a time, could be a little bit heavy, and there will be some blustery winds, although the winds not quite as strong as they have been through today. A largely grey, cloudy picture across much of England and Wales through large chunks of the day, but we should start to see something a little bit brighter developing from the west later on as that all pushes away towards the east. Temperatures are going to be a little bit higher than today across northern parts and feeling it with those lighter winds, but further towards the southeast, similar temperatures getting into the mid-20s. Now into Sunday, there could be a fair bit of cloud across central southern parts for a time, perhaps the odd spot of rain, but otherwise it's looking largely bright and a good deal of sunshine around, and with that we are going to be dragging in some hotter air, so temperatures rising, high 20s on Sunday. By Monday we're looking at low 30s in the southeast, but the risk of thunderstorms for some. Bye-bye.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m, followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain, followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Heck of a lot to get through this evening. Sadiq Khan and Hamza Yusuf have been saying that they don't feel safe in this country anymore because they are Muslims and because of the rise of the far right and because of Islamophobia. Now, I am very sorry that they feel that way. I'm sure everybody is. But I will be having a discussion about this at 10 because I'm afraid to say that ethnic minorities do not have a monopoly on feeling fearful in Britain at the moment. And people seem to be too afraid to say that. But it was only weeks ago that Angela Rayner proudly announced Labour's new Towns Task Force, all right? So here's what she had to say.
I've come to the House to make a statement about this government's plan to get Britain building. Yeah. Delivering economic growth is our #1 mission. It's how we'll raise living standards for everyone, everywhere. The only way we can fix our public services. So today I am setting out a radical plan to not only get the homes we desperately need, but also drive the growth, create jobs and breathe life back into towns and cities.
All right, but Rayner's bid to turbocharge house building will have repercussions. Take the small village of Tempsford in Bedfordshire, for example. This idyllic English village, which currently just has 600 residents, could end up sprawling into a city the size of Oxford, with homes built for up to 350,000 people. Imagine that where you live. And experts are warning that many other towns and villages could suffer the same fate. So, yeah, you better get imagining. It comes just days after Labour quietly announced plans to rip up the previous government's British Homes for British Workers policy, meaning that criminals, even terrorists, and, yes, as well, asylum seekers, could remain on the social housing priority list. There's a lot going on there. Joining me now is David Sutton, who's chairman of Tempsford Parish Council. David, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. Look, firstly, how do you and your residents feel about the idea of the population of your area growing to 350,000?
It's just crazy, to be fair. I mean, we're a very small village. There's 600 people here at the moment. Many of our residents have been farming for generations in this village, and people have moved here specifically to live in a rural community. They've lived and worked here for many, many years. To turn this into a city the size of Milton Keynes and Cambridge put together is just mental. We can't cope with that. The infrastructure is not here. We've got nothing here at all. We don't even have mains gas. We have issues with sewage every year. We have just huge problems. It does not work.
And is there a school, a hospital, the GPs there?
In Tempsford, we don't have a shop, let alone. I'm currently reopening the pub. We have a small farm shop. We have no school anymore. We have no shop. We have no supermarket, no dentist, no doctors, nothing at all. So this is completely greenfield development that they're talking about doing. And to be fair, it just seems a lazy idea that there's a big piece of space where the new East-West rail link will hit the East Coast main line. Let's just put all of the housing requirement that we need in this small little village, and there's nobody there that can argue.
Well, now, this is my next question. So how would you repel this? Because we're hearing mixed things, aren't we? Labour looking to do away with local, well, they would call it NIMBYism, right? But I don't really think that's what this is it? I mean, but they say, oh, well, we want to stop locals from being able to complain or stop things in the way that maybe they did before. And also give local authorities a quota, and then if they don't hit that quota for housing, they just do it anyway. So have you got any powers, really, here to stop this?
Not really. I mean, I think the biggest issue is we're not NIMBYs. We're quite happy for this village has got deep history. I live in a 450-year-old house. The RAF Tempsford was declared many years ago, there's books written on it about it being Churchill's most secret airbase, because all of the special operations executive, the secret agents, left from RAF Tempsford in a very secret way. It's not NIMBYism, it's just not everything in our backyard.
Well, history as well, isn't it? Yeah, exactly. And history and also, but also you can just make a great point, David. Sometimes people deliberately choose to go and live somewhere because they like it there and they like it the way it is. Right? And people shouldn't just be penalised now and told, well, you've just got to swallow 350,000 people. Can I ask, David, look, that if this happens, then a large chunk of these developments will, by law, have to be things like social housing as well. And there are concerns about some people about things like Operation Scatter that Labour are doing and things. Have you got a slight concern about who might live in some of these houses?
No, I don't think it matters who it is. That's really important to us. We are a rural community with 600 people. I moved here 7 years ago and have been welcomed into the community with open arms. I've gone from joining this small community to being chairman of the parish council in a few years. There's a lot goes on here. We're already split in two, this village, by the A1, and we do everything we can to maintain a community. To us, it doesn't matter who it is. That would be wrong to say that. But 350,000 people here. Yeah. It's the numbers of people that's wrong. It's not who it is.
Who it is. Good stuff. Look, thank you, David. And I do hope to talk to you again soon, actually, because we'll be keeping a close eye on this. It's David Sutton, though, the chairman of Tempsford Parish Council. I will say one thing that's very concerning there is it does appear, according to David, that this could well happen to, frankly, where you live. All right, well, a spokesman for the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government said no decisions have yet been made on the location of any new towns, and speculation to the contrary is deeply unhelpful. Well, I'm sure it is for them, yeah, but anyway. Coming up, the woke London Mayor Sadiq Khan hit the headlines for claiming he doesn't feel safe as a Muslim politician. Oh, yeah, and Hamza Yusuf joined in as well.
I don't know whether the future for me and my wife and my 3 children is going to be here in Scotland or the United Kingdom or indeed in Europe.
But does anyone really feel safe in Britain anymore? I'll tackle that at 10 p.m. Next, though, with police brace for violent clashes this weekend, Starmer's been reading football fans now, the Riot Act.
October meetings, that's why I've been talking to the police today about their plans for the weekend. Yes, football is added into the mix, there are other things.
Yeah, I mean, is the suggestion that there's some kind of crossover between far-right extremists and football fans just a blatant attack on the white working class? England football legend Harry Redknapp isn't having any of it, and he's on next.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is a big old headache because we talk a lot about GP appointments, don't we? But certainly almost everyone I know struggles to see a dentist when they need one.
Yes. You know the best time to go to a dentist? When? 2:30. 2:30.
That's actually quite good. It's better than my gags.
The guy that went to Goa, to India, to get his dental treatment, is that what you're talking about?
Well, yeah, so tell us about that. This is how desperate people are to get treatment now. So what's the story?
OK, the story is a guy couldn't get an appointment at the NHS, so he went all the way to Goa in India to get his dental appointment. Now, I think he probably just wanted to go on holiday, and he thought, I know, why don't I go on holiday to Goa and then get my teeth done? Look, people are travelling in their droves. There's whole aeroplanes full of people with medical tourists. Like in Turkey, you get a whole aeroplane with people with hair implants, things like that. Well,
so, yeah. I was going to go to
turkey teeth, isn't it?
Turkey teeth.
Turkey teeth. Well, now
that's when they strip the tooth down and you have these little pegs.
Yes, they strip them down. But in many cases, they strip them down far too low, so the nerve is exposed and it gets infected, and it's exposed to the elements. So you get infection in the tooth, and then you have to essentially take them all off. But by then, the infection spreads so far. I was getting my nails done the other day, which I don't do very often, and my nail technician said to me, "Is your dad still a dentist?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Please, can I have an emergency appointment?" I went to Turkey and I got my teeth done, and now they look incredible, but I'm in so much pain. They're all infected. She had 15 taken out from the top and 12 from the bottom, and it's an absolute disaster. But this is what people are feeling like they have to do.
So medical tourism doesn't always work.
No, but it shows, that Alex, that people can't get their teeth sorted here, so they go elsewhere. Listen, do you floss, by the way?
Don't floss.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
This is Patrick, Christys tonight, only on GB News. Now, this weekend, the football season kicks off again, but the occasion has been somewhat overshadowed by the police's decision to examine links between rioters and football hooliganism. All right, so officers reportedly believe there may be a crossover between the two groups. The National Police Coordination Centre announced there will be extra support for clubs this weekend, and earlier the Prime Minister had this to say about the start of the season.
I think there are a lot of things in the mix this weekend. But of course, whatever the challenge, we have to rise to it. And that's why I've had Cobra meetings. That's why I've been talking to the police today about their plans for the weekend. Yes, football is added into the mix. There are other things in the mix. But our focus has to be absolutely solely on the safety and security of our communities. And that's exactly where it is.
I don't know about you, but I can't help but wonder if there's a really lazy crossover taking place here. All right, we used to have a history of football violence, OK? And I'm sure that some people still like to go to the football and have a little bit of a tear-up. But we are nothing like we were back in the day. And if you look across the continent to pretty much every single other country, they beat the living daylights out of each other on a weekly basis over there, all right? It is not Brits who are a football hooligan problem anymore. And to try to demonise, I wonder... You know, traditionally, the white working-class football goer as having the potential to also be far-right rioters, is that not just a really, really lazy comparison? Is it not just actually bang out of order? It's wrong, demonising. I also think it's, well, frankly, it's trying to throw a net over an entire group of people. I mean, I just find it absolutely remarkable. We're still waiting for football manager Harry Redknapp to join us, but what I will do is, in just a couple of seconds, I'll throw this over to the panel. I just can't help but wonder, if you try to tarnish any other demographic of people, right, with the same thing, you've got the possibility to be a far-right racist rioter because you're going to go and watch Millwall play at the weekend, or you're going to go and watch Chelsea play at the weekend. I'm sorry, but it doesn't really sit that well with me. I think we seriously need to start pushing back on this. The demonisation of people who just look like they might fit a demographic of people that could be up to no good. I will be fascinated to see what the police's evidence for this is and whether or not Keir Starmer realises that in one fell swoop, alienating football fans, as well as potentially alienating pensioners, by the way, which is what we were talking about earlier on, actually, he's running out of demographics that might actually bother to support him, isn't he? But yes, like I said, we are hopefully going to get former Premier League football manager Harry Redknapp on. If we can't get him on now, we'll get him on a little bit later on in the programme. But I do have my wonderful panel with me, which is just as well, isn't it? John Sargent joins us, as well as Alex Armstrong. Right, OK, John, I'll start with you. Do you think this is a bit of a lazy trope from Keir Starmer to say, potentially try to group in football fans with far-right rioters?
Well, I mean, I think that, he knows about this area. That's what I think people think, there's the new Prime Minister, what's he like? He was the former Director of Public Prosecutions. This whole question about, should people be charged? What sort of sentence should they be given is something that he's very familiar with. He's also, frankly, obsessed by football. So you put the two things together.
He's Arsenal. I mean, he's not one of these people. He probably has olives at half-time.
No, but he's someone that's really interested. And he also knows that, in fact, all the football clubs, it is in their interest to make sure that people who might smash the place up or riot...
Sorry about this, John. I'm going to stop you. And you're in your prime, I know. But Harry Redknapp is with us now. Harry, thank you very much, mate. Great to have you on the show. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Right, look, what do you make of this? Do you think this is bad of the Prime Minister to maybe try to say that there's a link between football fans and far-right rioters, the likes that we've seen on the streets before?
No, I can't really see the link in it, Patrick. OK, there may be one or two that are football fans or football hooligans or whatever. But there's no way that we can actually decide that they are football fans. I don't see how the two have anything to do with each other, really. I can't see it. I can't see what that's going to do to the situation. I mean, we've all been upset looking at the riot, and it's been going on the back of 3 beautiful young girls in Southport getting murdered. There was no link with the guy, with the messages that went out on social media apparently caused this to start with, and it's a shame how it's gone. But I don't see any link with football or football. What it's got to do with stopping people going to football matches. I don't see that really as a deterrent at all.
No, and also, Harry, as well. You're kind of like traditional football goer, as it were. You're quite working class. I don't think that might have changed a bit over the years. The price of football and everything has priced some people out. But traditionally, a white working class. Go and watch the football of a weekend. And I think to even raise the suspicion that those people who go and watch their local team might in some way be involved in the far right, I just find that quite offensive.
Yeah, no, it is offensive. I can't see it. As I say, I can't see where the link is, really. How much hooliganism is there at football these days? Very, very little. You know, I think we go to football now. I go with my grandkids or whatever. I feel very safe at football. I don't see there being problems. We're going back to the 70s, the late 60s, when there were big problems with football. When I was playing the game, it was horrendous at that time. But I think that's gone in the game now. We don't get that very often. We don't get very, very, very few problems in football now. I think people go, it's all seating stadiums. People go there and behave in the main. And if anyone is out of the hooligans or anyone causes problem in the stands, I think they're quickly dealt with by stewards and police. So I really don't see that, you know, that's going to be a deterrent at all for anybody who believes they should be out rioting. I mean, but, you know, listen, we've had riots. You know, this is not the only riot we've had. We've had riots, you know, we can go back, you know, 18 months ago, whatever, we're pulling down some Winston Churchill statue and everybody's on the... We've had other riots. We've had riots in London recently, but it seems suddenly this particular riot, there's arrest after arrest, and now it's football. They're being called football hooligans. I really can't see it. I think that you know, the country at the moment, we need a big sort out in this country. The country is really, I find it quite disturbing. I think we are in a bit of a mess at the moment. I think lots of people are feeling very low about the way the country is. But it's no need, that doesn't give anyone the right to riot and smash up other people's property or attack policemen.
All right, mate. Look, thank you very, very much. That's Harry Redknapp there, former football manager and player. When I come back, Sadiq Khan and Hamza Youssef, well, they're not the only ones who don't feel safe in Britain anymore, are they? Stay tuned.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather coming to you from the Met Office. Things are going to hot up as we go through, particularly the latter part of this weekend, especially in the southeast. But before then, tomorrow will be a bit cloudy and a bit damp for some of us because we are going to see a bit of a frontal wave pushing its way in, and that's going to lead to increasing amounts of cloud as we go through the rest of this evening and overnight. But ahead of that, some clearer skies, and we're going to cling on to the clearer skies across eastern parts, but all the time a few showers across parts of Scotland, still pushing through on relatively brisk winds. In the west, where we have that cloud and that rain feeding in, temperatures aren't going to drop much. A bit fresher, though, towards eastern parts, where we have some clearer skies. So that cloud and any outbreaks of rain will gradually make their way eastwards across England and Wales as we go through the day tomorrow. So whilst eastern parts will start off the day quite bright, it is going to turn a bit grey later on, and watch out for some heavy rain over the hills towards the west as well. A brighter start a bit further north, lots of fine weather for Northern Ireland, just a few showers, similar for northwest England. Whilst across Scotland there'll be quite a few showers around, perhaps something a little bit more persistent for a time, could be a little bit heavy, and there will be some blustery winds, although the winds not quite as strong as they have been through today. A largely grey, cloudy picture across much of England and Wales through large chunks of the day, but we should start to see something a little bit brighter developing from the west later on as that all pushes away towards the east. Temperatures are going to be a little bit higher than today across northern parts and feeling it with those lighter winds, but further towards the southeast, similar temperatures getting into the mid-20s. Now into Sunday, there could be a fair bit of cloud across central southern parts for a time, perhaps the odd spot of rain, but otherwise it's looking largely bright and a good deal of sunshine around, and with that we are going to be dragging in some hotter air, so temperatures rising, high 20s on Sunday. By Monday we're looking at low 30s in the southeast, but the risk of thunderstorms for some. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We could be calling you with the news that you've won our latest Great British giveaway. An incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash. David from Kent was our last big winner. Listen to what he had to say about getting that winning call.
Hi, I'm David from Kent and I won £15,000 and it couldn't have come at a better time. I was gobsmacked. What have you got to lose? For what it costs? In fact, I've done it again this week, so I'd recommend it to anybody.
For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight,
So proud of Londoners who came together united against racism, Islamophobia and anti-Semitism. We've got to recognise, though, the far right's not gone away.
Sadiq Khan says he doesn't feel safe because he's a Muslim.
I don't know whether the future for me and my wife and my 3 children is going to be here in Scotland or the United Kingdom or indeed in Europe.
And Hamza Yusuf might flee the country, but...
What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing?
It's not just ethnic minorities who don't feel safe, though, is it? Also tonight...
It's an important strand of our work to stop the boats and tackle illegal migration.
What will you do with illegal migrants who come from our country? What will you do with them?
Well, today it's revealed that visa applications are down 70%, but it's because of Tory policies. Will Labour reverse that? And there's been a deadly plane crash in Brazil. Plus...
you can have it as well, you
One council is going to fine you for swearing in public. Well, they can... Oh, yes, and what's going on there, OK? On my panel tonight is ex-BBC and ITV political chief John Sargent, entrepreneur Joanna Jarju, and political commentator and broadcaster Alex Armstrong. Yes, get ready, Britain. Here we go. It's not just ethnic minorities that feel scared in Britain. Next.
Good evening. The top stories from the GB newsroom. Buckingham Palace says His Majesty the King has praised the way community spirit and compassion have countered the aggression and criminality on display during the riots. King Charles had been in telephone conversations tonight with the Prime Minister and police chiefs. Also, Keir Starmer has reiterated that police should remain on high alert going into the weekend. Earlier, a 30-year-old man was jailed for 8 months for racially aggravated intentional harassment during the riots in Leeds. The judge said Jordan Plain's sentence was reduced to take his guilty plea into account. Meanwhile, a Facebook user who urged people to attack a Leeds hotel used to house asylum seekers was also jailed today. 28-year-old Jordan Parlow was sentenced to 20 months after pleading guilty to publishing written material intended to stir racial hatred. Merseyside police have released CCTV images of 12 people following recent disorder in the area. Previous weeks have seen widespread violence across the country linked to anti-immigrant groups as mosques were also attacked and hotels holding asylum seekers were targeted. Courts are already sentencing people for taking part in the violence, with jail terms of up to 3 years handed down so far. Former Labour councillor Ricky Jones has been remanded in custody after appearing in court on charges of encouraging violent disorder at a rally organised by Stand Up to Racism. Jones was filmed addressing a crowd at the London demonstration on Wednesday evening. The 57-year-old was charged at Westminster's Magistrates' Court, which heard he gave a speech to a crowd which was capable of encouraging or assisting the commission of violent disorder. Plea and trial preparation has been set for the 6th of September. There are no survivors after a plane carrying 62 people plummeted into a residential area just north of Sao Paulo in Brazil. That's according to local authorities. If you're watching us on television now, you can see the footage of that plane drifting downwards and spiralling as it falls, crashing through the trees and breaking into a plume of smoke. The state's fire brigade has confirmed that 7 crews have been dispatched to the crash site. The airline Vopas says there were 58 passengers and 4 crew members on board that flight. No survivors, and a state official says the black box from inside the plane has now been found. And disgraced former BBC News presenter Hugh Edwards has been asked to return his salary by the corporation's board. It comes after the 62-year-old admitted in court last week to having indecent images of children. 7 of the 41 images were described as being in the most serious category of child abuse pictures and videos. The BBC's board has told him to repay his salary from the time he was arrested in November last year, saying the presenter undermined trust in the BBC and brought it into disrepute. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome along. Sadiq Khan has said that he's not safe because he's a Muslim politician. He also tweeted this out, saying that you need to check on your ethnic minority friends, OK? Now, Humza Yousaf has also said that he might flee the UK because of the riots.
You cut me open and I'm about as Scottish as you come. But the truth of the matter is, I don't know whether the future for me and my wife and my 3 children is going to be here in Scotland or the United Kingdom, or indeed in Europe and the West, because I have for some time really worried about the rise of Islamophobia. I wrote a column about it actually just about a month ago, the rise of the far right driven by Islamophobia in Europe, UK and the West.
If they really feel that way, then I do feel very sorry for them. But ethnic minorities are not the only people who no longer feel safe in Britain. People are very worried about Islamism. Sadiq Khan is the man who said that terror attacks were part and parcel of living in a big city. We see rampant knife crime and machete attacks, like this one, practically every day. And instead of addressing it, Mayor Khan seems to want to downplay it.
Us on the streets at night time and see about the gangs running around with machetes, because that's the stories I am hearing.
I say in a respectful way, I think the Tory candidates should stop watching The Wire. We're not living in Baltimore.
Humza Yousaf has arguably done more to stoke racial tensions than most other politicians.
My portfolio alone, the Lord President, white. The Lord Justice Clerk, white. Every High Court judge, white. The Lord Advocate, white. The Solicitor General, white. The Chief Constable, white. Every Deputy Chief Constable, white. Every Assistant Chief Constable, white. The head of the Law Society, white.
Unfortunately, of course, his P45 was also white. But Elon Musk today released this tweet. So he actually called Mr. Yousaf super racist. Right, well, there we go. Strong stuff from Elon there. But it's not just Muslim communities who feel unsafe. People are worried about random attacks, like the elderly man who was pushed onto train tracks. by a Kurdish man. People are worried about terrorism, like when asylum seeker Ahmad al-Swalmeen blew himself up outside Liverpool Women's Hospital. People are worried about safety when they go out to walk their dog. Asylum seeker Ahmed Alid stabbed a 70-year-old man to death in Hartlepool in revenge for the Israel-Hamas conflict. Talking of which, many Jews don't feel safe. Reports of anti-Semitic incidents in the UK in the first half of this year have reached another record high. 1,978 were recorded between January and July this year. People are worried about the safety of children. There is obviously the horrific Southport incident recently, but there's way more than that. There's this incident where an asylum seeker raped a 15-year-old girl after his deportation flight was blocked by protesting cabin crew. Women are afraid of being sexually assaulted on the train. Ryan Johnston raped a woman on the London Underground, OK? He raped her in front of other passengers. Now, he was jailed for that. The far-right violence and criminality is wrong, and it needs to be stamped out. But do these politicians not understand that it's all of us, not just ethnic minorities, who don't feel safe anymore? Let's get the thoughts of my panel. We've got former BBC chief political correspondent John Sargent. We have got entrepreneur and social commentator Joanna Jarju, and we've got Alex Armstrong as well, political commentator and broadcaster. Nice to have all three of you. Thank you very much. Look, John, I'll start with you on this. Do you think people understand, politicians understand, maybe Sadiq Khan, Hamza Yusuf understand, that actually it isn't just ethnic minorities who don't feel safe?
No, I think you're absolutely right. And there are all these tensions. I think what people have difficulty in their own lives is looking out and thinking, how does it affect me? And if you're only, or one of your only, if you're getting social media and television and media generally, you think, God, the world is really going to the dogs. This is it. And I think there's a danger inevitably. And I remember very starkly when the riots of 2001 were taking place, and we were moving in the country quite a bit, my wife and I, and it was funny, the country people who weren't affected at all by any of this were the most energised. We must stop this, I'm going to leave, I'm going to go to Australia, because they were a long way away from the places where it actually was going on, where people could get not a different view, but they could put it in perspective a bit more. Whereas if you just get it from, as you say, going through the list of all these things, all these things are correct. Apparently, according to the official figures, violence is actually less now than it was.
I don't believe it. I know. I'm
not going to argue it. I'm just saying, apparently, according to the official figures, that's it. But people think of themselves, they think of their own feelings and emotions, and those feelings and emotions are very high at the moment.
Joanna, what did you make of some of those comments by Sadiq Khan and Hamza Yusuf there, where, it was this king of, today is the day to check on your ethnic minority friends and neighbours, and I don't think I can live here anymore because of Islamophobia and all of that stuff. Whereas, I think there are people of all races who really just don't feel safe here anymore, right?
Well, I think for a lot of countries, people don't feel safe because crime is crime, right? There isn't any country that doesn't have a level of crime. But I find that with other communities, what you do tend to be more scared of is the most extreme cases of crime, like somebody having a machete, like a terrorist attack and things like that. But it's different for me, and I actually completely relate to Hamza Yusuf and Sadiq Khan of what they've been saying. And funnily enough, I wrote something similar on my social media about, I don't have children yet, but I'm not sure that I would want to bring up children here based on the things that I've seen this week. And I think that the key thing to kind of acknowledge about how ethnic minorities feel in regard to this is that a lot of the things have been very triggered. So, very triggering, sorry. So, if somebody's going to go on a crazy person with a machete, they would just target anybody, right? They don't discriminate in that sense. Whereas what we've seen is very, very specific, racially targeted attacks when it comes to asylum seekers and when it comes to just anybody who is black or brown. And for somebody like me who has experienced quite extreme racism like that, it's triggering to the point where I'm thinking, well, I've gone through that just for being black, not because anybody's particularly crazy. They could be normal with all the rest of society. So am I going to experience the same thing moving forward?
I get that and everything. I mean, there is also the other side of it, which is that I actually have serious questions about whether or not raising kids here is the right thing because of Islamism. And because of other things that we see. I look at that in some of the situations that have happened recently, in Birmingham. for example. I look around here in London where I live now, and I think, would I really want to send my child to that school in that area? And, you know, so again, my view is there's maybe slightly different things going on, but it affects everyone. And can I just ask Alex as well, the idea of Hamza Yusuf saying that he doesn't necessarily feel the West is safe anymore, do you think he's going to go on and get on better? Where?
Well, that's a really good question. Where would he go that is safe? Particularly for a man who proclaims he is Scottish through and through,
and
quite
progressive.
frankly.
So where's he going to go? We'll live in Dubai?
Well, he's certainly not going to be going there. Look, the reality is, actually, if we look at the crime statistics, ethnic minorities actually, when it comes to particular things like knife crime, for example, commit it against each other more than they do anybody else. So talking about adding more fuel to the flames, if we add more cultures into the mix here, it's going to get worse. This is just the facts. These are the numbers, unfortunately. Everyone is feeling this, and this is what people are talking about. And the real issue we've got with politicians today is that they, rather than sit down and listen to the concerns, everyone's got valid concerns here, they are just branding people, far-right, racist, all these things. You can't talk about immigration, you're racist. You can't talk about ethnic minority crime rates, you're racist. And actually, if we start getting to the root cause of these issues, we will solve them and people will feel safer.
But I think that the key thing as well is that, and I completely acknowledge that you would be just as scared for different reasons as I would if, you know, we had children, not together. He's married. Sorry, Emily. But it's different in the sense that, like, I saw a video of somebody kind of spitting at a bus driver and calling him the P word and things like that, and it comes in different levels. So your level of scared is you're scared of the most extreme. We're both scared of similar things in the sense that you'll be scared of a terror attack, whereas I'm scared of another layer of stuff, of somebody shouting things at me. Things like I mentioned it last week on this show about next door neighbour, literally, that I couldn't get away from, posting dog poo into my house as a child. So it's like, it's these microaggressions, and I wouldn't even call that a microaggression, but it's also like, well, yeah, but in the grand scheme of things, like, it's so much wider in terms of just looking over your shoulder when you're walking down the street. I look over my shoulder anyway as a woman, and then it's a double whammy now, and when you're seeing all across...
Point, isn't it? That is another point, because there's all these different demographics of people that feel scared, or because of the way Britain is at the moment, John, you've got people now I think are more fearful for children. Women obviously do, and you see some absolutely horrendous stories that are going on there. I think a lot of old people feel vulnerable for a variety of different reasons. Maybe they already have, but I think maybe slightly heightened now. I mean, I look over my shoulder in a way that I never used to. And I mean, I don't mind saying this on telly. You know, I've currently got a situation going on which is like really weird, where every single night now outside where I live, there's a group of lads who pull up in a car and then spit on my car, and then go, you know, which I just find that weird. You know, it's not a nice way to start your day, is it, having to clean that off? I don't like that. You know, I don't really like that in Britain.
No, it's horrible.
And it's my point being, John, is it's not just Sadiq Khan and Hamza Yusuf who have a monopoly on not really liking the way things are, I don't think.
No, I mean, I think the only thing is that I suppose, from my point of view, I was a reporter for many years in very often very violent situations. The idea that I would sort of feel, right, I'm in a free country, I can walk wherever I like. Frankly, it's never occurred to me. Since I was a reporter going to dangerous places, I'm always aware of, is this a safe area, is it not a safe area? Obviously, it's true of Northern Ireland when I was there in the Troubles for over 7 years. But so I suppose from my point of view, I've never felt it was my kind of golden right personally to go wherever I wanted to go and feel I was completely free. I've always felt constrained. I mean, at school, people were bullying people, all sorts of difficulties that I had to suffer, which I don't feel myself as a victim at all, not at all. But I'm aware of that. I've always been aware of these things. I've always been aware of, be careful about this, don't do that. It's never occurred to me, as I say, that you could sort of... People saying to me, but, you know, I'm Jewish, why shouldn't I just walk straight through London any time of the day or night? And you think, well, look, if there's an anti-Israel demonstration going on, be careful.
Can I just say that the problem I have, and we get back to the original point, which is about Sadiq Khan and Hamza Yusuf, is that they are not... As a political leader, your job is to look at everyone's opinion and try and form a policy or a response that encompasses everyone's feelings. And what they're doing is deliberately singling out ethnic minorities of specific backgrounds, by the way, not all ethnic minorities, specific ethnic minorities, and therefore they're making other people feel unsafe. What Sadiq Khan should have come out and said is, look after each other today. All Londoners, come together, look after each other.
Funny,
all Londoners reject racism.
Alex,
but this is the problem, Joanna. But if you single it out and say, you must look after brown people, you must look after black people, you get into real
I'm not
problems.
being funny, but do you understand how triggering it is to watch that people were literally going and trying to burn people of a certain colour?
I totally understand that.
But what I'm saying is that...
But that's not my point, Joanna.
No, but what I'm saying is that when you've gone through certain things, specifically because of the colour of your skin, and I don't care how people keep saying this is a protest or a riot against specifically illegal migration, it got to a point this week where it was like, it went past that. People didn't care whether you're illegal, whether you were born here, whether you came here legally. They did not care. It was just because of the colour of your skin. And I think that is the key kind of thing that we have to decipher. And that's why he's talking about ethnic minorities in particular, because people are targeting just because of the colour of your skin.
Well, absolutely, but then you will go to some communities in Britain. Let's take some parts of Birmingham, for example. I'm not going to talk about any specific cases, but there is a reverse part of that also that comes up. Patrick's talking about experiences perhaps where that's happening to him. And so what I'm saying is your duty as a political leader of this country, particularly as the mayor of the biggest city in our capital, should be to unite everybody. Everyone look after each other. The minute you start saying, well, actually, you're not worthy of my sympathy, you actually begin to radicalise those people.
Well, actually, no, because that's not what he was saying. That's not what he was saying. We've got to actually take a step back. These are two ethnic minority politicians, and in the context that they were talking about their own experiences, how they feel, what they see for the future of their family. Like, I'm sorry if they're not kind of coddling other people as well that might be going through, but the reality is that he's talking about the vast majority of the attacks.
Sorry, very briefly, one final thing. Hamza Youssef has stoked the fuel of these culture wars with his racist rhetoric.
You won't say that about Farage, though, will you?
All right, sorry. We're going to got to go to the next segment because I am getting shouted at. But thank you very much.
I've been here 2 minutes
that was
and
great.
shouted at me.
Right, coming up. As a Kent council introduces £100 fines for people caught mouthing off on the street. Could Brits really be forced to cough up for swearing? And yes, shocking scenes from Brazil today. But first, the UK's immigration levels, well, they've fallen significantly following curbs on visas introduced by the previous Tory government. But will Keir Starmer reverse this? Former Tory MP Brendan Clark-Smith, well, he's on and he's next.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday from 8 p.m.
The court on Wednesday ruled that a teenager was wrongly ignored before being forced into end-of-life care. Sadiq Khan, who was 19, died last year after being prevented from travelling abroad for treatment after doctors said her condition was incurable. Doctors said Ms. Thrumalesh's objection to their decision was unreasonable and that she should have all life-sustaining treatment ended and be put on a palliative care pathway. Last August, a ruling said that the teenager lacked mental capacity to make her own decisions. But 3 judges in the Court of Appeal overturned that decision last week. Lawyers said the move reaffirms the right of patients to disagree with their doctors. The teenager remained fully conscious while being treated by the University Hospitals Birmingham NHS Foundation Trust. Well, to discuss this tragic case, Sadiq Shah's father, Thirumalesh, and brother Varshan join me now. Thank you so much for joining me in these desperately sad circumstances. This is very important for other people who may find themselves in a similar position, that they will be able to make decisions about their own care with the support of their families, rather than the sometimes arrogance of the medical profession who think that they know best. So you must be, I hope, very reassured by this judgment that Sadiq Shah has achieved something for other people.
Yes, definitely, because this arrogance transformed into cruelty towards my sister's care and ill treatment of the whole family. They think they are on the top of the hierarchical spectrum, and they treated us like we were on the bottom of the lower end of the chains, or rather as low class, but we ensured that our class remained.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Now, according to new numbers released today, Britain's high levels of immigration are falling significantly. Provisional Home Office figures for the number of migrants coming to the country on skilled worker, health and care and study visas has fallen from around 141,000 in July last year to 91,000. So that was, there we go, that's all right. Now, clearly, Sir Keir Starmer will take this as a win in his pledge to reduce what he labels sky-high amounts of net migration. But is this really a victory that he can actually claim? Because the drop is being attributed to a policy introduced by the previous Tory government, which banned most international students and health and social care workers bringing their family members to the UK. So former Conservative MP Brendan Clark-Smith joins me now. Brendan, thank you very much. I mean, Keir Starmer's probably going to claim this as a win, isn't he? I mean, you know, would you not have to acknowledge that it is?
I think it's pretty difficult, Patrick, the number of days he's been in office. I don't think he can claim that he's done such a bad job of running the country that a lot of people have decided they no longer want to live here, not just yet. But yeah, I mean, James cleverly brought a lot of these in. This has been done over the last year. We're expecting that drop to come in. And particularly, we're looking at people who were, I think, really abusing the university system and the social care visas and really tightening that up. I suppose the bigger question, Patrick, is if we knew this drop in migration was coming, you know, why did we call the election when we did? Why didn't we wait for the good news to come through first?
That's a really good point, actually. That is a really good point, because conceivably this drop is going to continue as well. And this is, am I right in saying, this is about people bringing their dependents over. So this was what was seen by a lot of people as a backdoor into Britain, wasn't it, really? That if you come and you work as in the care sector or whatever, that you can bring your mum with you, essentially, and you can bring over, all these people with you. And the Tories did stop that. So why didn't Rishi Sunak just wait for that to filter through and then call the election?
I don't know. I mean, there's the Rwanda scheme. We've just seen a cut in interest rates as well. That's something else. So there's all that good news. There's the argument about the element of surprise, but what's done is done. And I'm sat here on my holidays rather than doing something else at the moment, unfortunately. But I mean, part of it was student numbers. I mean, I've been a foreign student. I went to Sweden for a couple of years, but I wouldn't have dreamt of bringing my mum with me. I think that's the last thing we wanted, to be honest. But yeah, we had that. We had some universities. We'd noticed that we're doing significantly more of this. We'd noticed that certain countries, and I think Nigeria and India were very high on the list, had been taking advantage of this system. So close that loophole, and then with social care workers, the other thing, care workers. But again, some of them didn't even take the social care jobs in the end. They just had the visa.
And there was a ready supply of people who seemed perfectly willing to fake social work visas as well. I mean, there was a big report that came out about that. The good news, I suppose, about if we're worried that there might be too many people abusing our system from Nigeria, is that Nigeria have just issued a travel warning to the UK in relation to the riots. So it looks as though the people can just enjoy the peace and quiet of Lagos for a little bit longer. But I would argue that maybe, though, Brendan, whilst this is good news now, that those numbers are still sky high. And one of the reasons we are in some of the issues that we've got going on in the country at the moment, it is because, unfortunately, the Conservatives let them get too high for too long.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the time people focus on illegal migration, and obviously there's the Rwanda scheme we can speak about and so on. But illegal migration only made up a small amount of those numbers. And the elephant in the room's always been actual sort of net legal migration, and it got up to that 700 odd thousand. It then went down to 600 and something odd thousand before. We spoke for many years about getting it in the tens of thousands, and I think the Migration Observatory said that by autumn or by next year we could even get it down to 200. But again, you could argue that that's too high, Patrick. So, yeah, I mean, it's not just been the UK, it's been across the whole of Europe, this sort of large sort of wave of migration's been happening. But it does show that, you know, there have been things that have been abused. Some of that's on our watch. I take responsibility for that. Try to do something about it. The numbers are coming down, but I think there's a lot more needs to be done.
Yeah, OK, and I suppose that the fear is that Keir Starmer in some way tries to reverse this. I mean, is there any way he can, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it used to be, I think, I'm just looking at the figures, it used to be 18,600 if you wanted to bring a spouse over to the country. We then increased that to about 29,000, and the plan is next year to put that up nearer to 38,700.
So £38,000 a year, roughly, yeah? That's what you're talking about. That's what
yeah, so you can bring your spouse over, but obviously you've got to earn a decent income to be able to do that. See, if your spouse is coming over because they've got a good job, then that's a separate thing as well. But I understand that's been paused for next year. I think with that, with other things being scrapped, I think you could see those figures going up quite significantly again.
All right. Well, look, thank you very much, especially if we are off somewhere on holiday as well. I didn't realise that. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us. And, yes, hope to see you again soon. All right, you take care. That's former Conservative MP Brendan Clark-Smith there. A Home Office spokesperson said, "We have set out a clear plan to bring down historically high levels of legal migration by tackling the root causes behind high international recruitment, by linking immigration, labour market and skills systems. We will ensure we train up our homegrown workforce and address the shortage of skills. Immigration brings many benefits to the UK, but it must be controlled and delivered through a fair system." Right, coming up, yeah, really terrifying scenes from Brazil today. Yeah, I'll have more on that as a plane just fell out the sky, seemingly. I'll also have all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages, hot off the press. Don't go anywhere. And I'm afraid as well, I do have some breaking news for you about some people who think that this person is a man who's been going around beating up women. Stay tuned.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather coming to you from the Met Office. Things are going to hot up as we go through, particularly the latter part of this weekend, especially in the southeast. But before then, tomorrow will be a bit cloudy and a bit damp for some of us because we are going to see a bit of a frontal wave pushing its way in, and that's going to lead to increasing amounts of cloud as we go through the rest of this evening and overnight. But ahead of that, some clearer skies, and we're going to cling on to the clearer skies across eastern parts, but all the time a few showers across parts of Scotland, still pushing through on relatively brisk winds. In the west, where we have that cloud and that rain feeding in, temperatures aren't going to drop much. A bit fresher, though, towards eastern parts where we have some clearer skies. So that cloud and any outbreaks of rain will gradually make their way eastwards across England and Wales as we go through the day tomorrow. So whilst eastern parts will start off the day quite bright, it is going to turn a bit grey later on, and watch out for some heavy rain over the hills towards the west as well. A brighter start a bit further north, lots of fine weather for Northern Ireland, just a few showers, similar for northwest England. Whilst across Scotland there'll be quite a few showers around, perhaps something a little bit more persistent for a time, could be a little bit heavy, and there will be some blustery winds, although the winds not quite as strong as they have been through today. A largely grey, cloudy picture across much of England and Wales through large chunks of the day, but we should start to see something a little bit brighter developing from the west later on as that all pushes away towards the east. Temperatures are going to be a little bit higher than than today across northern parts and feeling it with those lighter winds, but further towards the southeast, similar temperatures getting into the mid-20s. Now into Sunday, there could be a fair bit of cloud across central southern parts for a time, perhaps the odd spot of rain, but otherwise it's looking largely bright and a good deal of sunshine around. And with that, we are going to be dragging in some hotter air, so temperatures rising, high 20s on Sunday. By Monday, we're looking at low 30s in the southeast, but the risk of thunderstorms for some. Bye-bye.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. Now it's time to bring you the very first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. Here they are. We start with the Daily Telegraph. King calls for unity in the wake of the riots. Employers may be forced to boost pension contributions to ease a retirement crisis. And civil servants on over £100,000 rises by 40% in a year. That's good. Good. Right, have we all got more productive as a nation? No, but they get more money. Anyway, the Daily Mail. BBC tells, quotes, villain Hugh, hand back £200,000 of pay. Incandescent bosses accuse Hugh Edwards of taking salary in bad faith. Let's go to the Times. King hails riots response. King Charles has praised community spirit that countered aggression after talks with the Prime Minister and police chiefs. I will be honest with you, I don't think the King should have waded into this. I really do not. Daily Express, King calls for unity in wake of riots. Again there, I think it's a mistake, personally. The Mirror, give back our cash. That's the same story there about Hugh Edwards. And we finish off with the Daily Star. Rise of the cheeky office tea leaves. Psst, want to buy some paper clips? Millions of us are nicking pens, notepads and even printer paper from work as the cost of living crisis bites. Yeah. Or in the case of our office, forks. Everyone nicks forks. What? We don't have any forks out there in that bizarre kitchen. And we bought more forks, and then those forks forked off. And I don't know. You know who you are if you're watching this, you work here. Anyway, right. Moving on from all of that, I am, of course, joined by my wonderful panel. But I want to break some news for you now. Yes, Imane Khalif, off of Algeria, has won the gold medal in the women's welterweight boxing at the Olympics, defeating China's Yang Lui. The pair have been spotted in the spotlight of this Paris Games amid a gender dispute that has dominated headlines. OK, I'm going to talk about this with my panel a little bit now. So, Alex, I'll start with you on this. Right? Am I right in saying that these two people are both, according to the Olympics, men, and that fighting each other in the women's boxing final?
Well, according to the Olympics, no, they're women. But,
right.
But institutions like the International Boxing Association, I think that's right, not the other way around, International Boxing Association, have disqualified some of these boxers, particularly Imane Khalif, who is a man, biologically seen to be a man. They have a gender test, and this boxer was disqualified for good reason, because men shouldn't be fighting women in the boxing ring. This is just common sense. The Olympics obviously are being extra woke and don't want to discriminate or upset people, so therefore they've let them box each other. It is mad in 2024 that two men are fighting each other.
Well, actually, I'm not sure. I think that only one of them is. I think it's this Imane Khalif who's the one who's got the gender issue. I think there's,
who is the
I think there's another boxer in a different weight class. I think there's another boxer in a different weight class. But the point does still stand, whether or not this should really be allowed. I mean, go on. I mean, I was going to ask the woman, actually. Going to ask the woman.
How dare you assume John's gender?
But I'll come to you in a second, John. But how do you feel about this? I mean, is this not a bloke beating up women?
No, it's not, because this particular person, I think it's very convenient now to basically be saying that this person is a bloke just because the other organisation says that she is. This person has...
for good reason.
No, this person has actually been in the Olympics before, and when she was losing, nobody had a problem. And there's been actual, criticism of this other organisation about how corrupt they are. It was very ironic, and there's been some claims of alleged kind of corruption about Russia being involved, because what happened was that she beat somebody who was Russian. They got really annoyed and were like, oh, by the way, we're going to do this gender test, and now apparently you're a man. So there's all of these different conversations. There's different tests being made, and I just think it's completely unfair when we haven't got to a final result. At the end of the day, it's their standard, it's the international...
They say that he's got XY chromosomes.
Alleged, though, by another organisation.
I just not believe that. But this is what I don't quite understand. So, there are numerous different things that I think would allude to the fact that Imam Khalif is a man, right? I think that there is a physical appearance. I kind of think that is...
I agree, it's very important.
That's what I would normally go off in day-to-day life, right? And I think that there is that there. And there's also the fact that at least someone, who, for no personal gain to themselves, has done some tests and said that they've got XY chromosomes. So why are we disbelieving this?
Yeah, I think the only sort of extra problem is that in Algeria, it's illegal to either be gay or be trans.
Yes. Okay.
So his actual sort of domestic situation is weird anyway. Yes. Certainly his physique is strange. Her, if you like. Her, him, her, I don't mind. Yeah. This poor bloke, really. Poor... Anyway, the point about this is that the key point is, if we were told what the gender test was, the IOC said, I hope we won't go back to old-fashioned sex tests.
But women want it.
I think a few old-fashioned sex tests might be a good idea.
Well, ask the women Olympians. They demanded it happen. They actually want these tests to happen.
I suppose there is that situation. So I am keen to get where you're at on this, because female athletes have spoken out against this. So is they... Where are we here now? Is it just seem to be more progressive to allow this to happen than not? Is that where we are?
No, I just think that I actually think it's a bit of an excuse for some of the female, and I'll say that as a woman, because especially with the Italian that she was originally against, crying after. And I'm not saying that the punch wasn't hard and it was awful to watch, but I did say last week on this show that, if it was two men and it was a knockout, in less than a minute, you'd be saying, wow, what an amazing boxer. And like I said, it's not like this person throughout her whole career has just been knocking women out flat within the first minute. She's been losing for a lot of the time, and she just got better now. She's been beating her opponents, like the Russian, in the other organisation, in the other competition, and now it's a problem because she's got too strong.
Why can't we just solve this? This is very simple. Solve it with a test. Do a test, then this all goes away. Why are we so adverse to trying to find the truth?
She has done a test. She has done a test with the International Olympic Committee.
The only test which was agreed on was they looked at her passport and felt a hormone, and she says she's a woman, that's it.
That's it. That's not a test.
Well, that's not a test. No, they got themselves into a position where they thought it was going to be easier, just say OK, because other people are going to complain about it. There's going to be controversy. Let's go ahead with this. And they were wrong.
Well, look, I just hope we don't see more and more and more of this across every single discipline. There are people coming out and saying, look, it's a matter of time before a female boxer gets killed. I do, however, agree, Joanna, that I must say, when I saw that Italian woman, stepping aside, my initial thought was, right, that's horrendous. I wouldn't like to have, I wouldn't like to have fought a man if I was a woman. And then I did think, I wondered, was that really the right thing? You've trained for 3 years, you've got a team behind you, you've got a country there, but, then I sort of suppose, who am I to say that woman should have just continued taking a beating? it's a bit of a tricky situation. But anyway, moving on. A plane with 62 people on board crashed in Brazil earlier today. Unfortunately, there are not believed to be any survivors on board. The flight was en route from Cascavel in the state of Parana to Sao Paulo. Video shared on social media showed what appeared to be the plane just dropping out of the sky and plunging into a cluster of trees, followed by a plume of smoke. Let's take a look.
Tá porra! Caralho, bicho! Nossa!
I mean, just look at it there. The smoke goes up. I mean, frankly, it's everyone's worst nightmare, isn't it? Being on a plane and that kind of stuff happening. Like I said, sadly, it doesn't appear that there are any survivors. And I think you look at that footage and you can understand why. But we'll get to establish exactly what happened there. But yeah, just the way it kind of just drops out the sky. It's terrifying. Yeah, it's a slice of a horror movie, isn't it? But all right. So look now, a pretty extraordinary story in Kent. All right. So, you might be forgiven for not knowing what a PSPO is, but it's a Public Space Protection Order, which, of course, is nothing like anything George Orwell would have written about. A Public Space Protection Order have been issued in certain towns, which will fine people £100 for swearing. Those overheard using abusive language which may cause distress will be charged under what some are calling a draconian measure. Labour councillor Heather Keane said antisocial behaviour can have a detrimental effect on people's enjoyment of the place where they live if it isn't dealt with. It can also spoil the experience of visitors and holidaymakers. We know that making Thanet a safer and cleaner place to live in, work in or visit is a top priority for residents. And this new PSPO is a positive step. I'm sorry, I'm laughing because this is ridiculous. You can't go... I'm going to take a break. When I come back, we're going to talk about this, OK? Because we cannot possibly have people following you around. So if someone has just sworn at another bloke outside a pub and you rock up and say you're going to find him, it's not going to end well. Right, anyway, I've got some more front pages for you. And also, I'm going to be joined by the crocodile twins. Yes, the sisters, Georgia and Melissa Lorry, who survived a near-deadly crocodile attack in 2021. They are turning their tragedy into a mammoth triumph, and they'll be on shortly. Stay tuned.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Football and gambling can go hand in hand and cause long-term problems. New figures show that young adults aged between 16 and 24 who have bet over the last year are more likely to report mental health issues compared to those in older age groups.
And joining us now to discuss this is Matt Burgess, who is a former gambling addict and now helps those to deal with their own gambling issues.
Yeah, I think gambling is one of those things that is so accessible now. Everyone's got a kind of mobile phone in their pocket, walk around with a kind of 24-hour casino, if you like. So I think it's really important that people realise that we have to sort of recognise that that is a month of quite condensed gambling, and we don't want people to sort of carry that on into their everyday life, because that's when it can become really risky and it could become addictive.
I had no idea, though, that it was linked to first-time gambling. For the first time, people might be able to pick up and have a go. And then it doesn't end there. It goes on, because by then you've got the bug. Is that how it works?
You've got to remember, for things like the Euros, the World Cup, so you get a lot more people watching football and therefore potentially betting on football.
May I ask you about how severe your own gambling addiction got?
Well, look, I think there was a couple of touch points for me where I realised that things were getting out of hand. There were some times at university where, I kind of thought, I'm definitely doing this a bit too much, but, kind of thought maybe it would move on once I left, but it didn't. It did follow me. And then, I got to points where I was at my worst gambling 16, 17 hours a day. I was spending huge amounts of money. It can spiral out of control very, very quickly, and that was the important thing that we want to highlight is, what can start as fun can become very, very dangerous in a sense.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys. Now, I've only got one front page to bring you now, so let's do it. It is The Guardian. Universities face tipping point as money runs out, apparently. There was also some stuff there about the Prime Minister upgrading the Online Safety Act. And Katarina Johnson-Thompson wins her first Olympic medal. The run of her life, they say. Good. To be honest with you, I'm looking forward to watching that when I get home. But now, if you've watched the show before, you might remember that we spoke to Georgia and Melissa Lorry. In June 2021, Melissa was attacked by a crocodile in Mexico. Now, Melissa's twin sister, Georgia, punched the crocodile in the face, saving her sister's life. Good stuff. Since then, the twins have talked openly about the impact that the attack sadly had on their mental health. And they are about to embark now on a marathon swim to raise money for PTSD UK. And I'm very pleased to say that joining me now are the sisters, Melissa Lorry and her twin sister as well, who saved her in the attack, Georgia. Thank you very much, both to see you again. It's fantastic. So, look, just tell me what it is that you're actually planning on doing then.
Yeah, so we are swimming the Thames Marathon. So it's near on 14 kilometres between Henley-on-Thames and Marlow. So that's on Sunday. So I don't know if we've bitten off more than we can chew, but hopefully not, and we'll be able to do it. So, yeah.
All right, now, you are raising money, are you? Is that right? Is this one of the main reasons why you're doing it?
Yeah, we are, yeah, for two great causes, for PTSD UK, and Compañeros en Salud, which is a medical healthcare charity which provides healthcare training to impoverished communities in the state of Chiapas. OK, and people can, if they want to donate, how can they do that?
Yeah, so they can go to Just Giving and find us. It's Crocodile Twins Big Swim.
Lovely, great. I mean, well, and it's a good name for it as well. Let's be honest, because of what happened. And you know, look, obviously, it is a remarkable story in the sense of what you did, but it has left a lasting impact on you. I suspect, hence the PTSD awareness, right? Would you mind just maybe reminding our viewers a little bit of what happened, and also just what impact has it had?
Yeah, so we were in Mexico traveling at the time, and we went to see the bioluminescence in Puerto Escondido. So it was a really beautiful place called Manialtepec Lagoon, and we went for a swim. They said it was safe, but unfortunately the tour guide was unlicensed. He didn't know the area, and it was Melissa that saw the crocodile first. Yeah. And as she was ahead of us, she was actually the furthest behind when we turned away, and it bit you by the arm and dragged her under. It did, yeah.
I mean, gosh, and presumably you must have thought this is like something out of a horror film, and you know, there's no coming back from this.
Oh God, yeah, it was absolutely terrifying. Something out of your worst nightmares, isn't it?
It's not something that you'd want to see. Put it that way.
Of course. And you know, it must have left a lasting impact on you as well. And so, do you think you might find this kind of epic challenge in some way a bit cathartic? Is it? Is this an attempt to try to maybe help yourselves as well as raise money for other people as well?
Yeah, that's exactly the word I was going to use. It's very cathartic and healing. I think just to have a goal that we set ourselves, it really helps you put one foot in front of the other. And like you said, you know, to give back to people that helped us, we had an enormous amount of support after the event. And it's just our way of giving back. But, you know, there's a huge amount of people that suffer from PTSD or more so CPTSD, which is a complex post-traumatic disorder.
Not even realising.
Yeah, and that's over a prolonged period. So we kind of just want to raise awareness of that and just show people that there is a light at the end of the tunnel and there are things that are capable for you if you just put your mind to it, you know, so...
Yeah. Well, look, best of luck to you. I think we do have a link that we can put on the screen to the fundraiser. And there it is. So people will be able to see that on their screens right now. And it's Crocodile Twins Marathon Swim. So if you put that in, then you can donate a little bit of money. And the swim is it this Sunday? The target's 8,000. What are you on there? On the 5,262. That might have changed in the last few minutes. I don't know. But your target is 8,000, I believe. So good luck with that. Good luck with the swim. And I must say, you're going to face a few different challenges in the Thames, I think. But I do hope that you manage to stay well.
Yeah, shopping trolleys.
Yeah, shopping trolleys, yeah, everything. Look, best of luck, and I'd love to have you back on the show and talk to us afterwards as well about how it's gone. All right, so take care, and well done. Well done with everything. So all the best, all the best. Thank you. That is Georgia and Melissa Laurie there. Remarkable story, that. Remarkable story. I must say, whenever we talk about that in the office, and we still do talk about that in the office quite a lot, it always raises some serious questions about whether or not you would have done that for your sibling, fought off a crocodile, you know, because it does say a lot about the relationship that you've got, doesn't it? But anyway, it's time to reveal today's Greatest Britain Union Jackass. Right, John, who is your Greatest Briton, please?
Greatest Britain, Toby Roberts. Now, you might say yesterday I had no idea who he was, but this morning I watched him climb up this amazing climbing structure as part of the Olympics in Paris.
OK.
And it looked as if he'd failed to get the gold which he thought he would get, and the brilliant young Japanese, who turns out to be a friend, also fell back, but because he fell back, suddenly this young man realised that he'd got the gold, and his father was there and everything else. It was just one of those extraordinary Olympic moments, because he couldn't believe it. He didn't know what, he was then interviewed, what do you think about this? He said, I've been training for 10 years, had no idea this was going to happen. And it just made him a sort of glorious story from nowhere. Best of luck.
It's a good start. Go on, Joanna, who's your greatest Britain, please?
Mine are all the counter-protesters this week, people of Walthamstow and, you know, far afield, who have basically just shown that there's another side of Britain, and it was actually very comforting, I'm sure, to other minorities as well, to see that, you know, this isn't the entire country that are just raging racists.
OK, all right, go on, Alex.
Mine's John Hayes. He's the hero in Southport who tackled the attacker, got stabbed in the leg for it. But he also sent a really strong message to Keir Starmer and the government, say, engage with people who feel disaffected. And I think he's a hero for doing both those things.
OK. Well, look, fantastic choices there. I'm going to go for John Hayes, who did speak out, really, about all of this in the wake of the Southport atrocity. We're going to go to John's Union Jackass now. Go on.
Right, Robbie Moore, you might not have heard of him. He was the water minister, would you believe it? And earlier this year, before the election, he told the Environment Agency, don't publish the raw sewage spills figure for last year. And so it now has come out, it's now been published after the election, and the number of spills last year doubled from the year before.
Right, yes. Well, that's it's got off to that's terrible. Anyway, go on, Joanna, who's your...
I could have picked so many this week, but Nigel Farage, seeing as he's basically the mouthpiece for a lot of stuff, but he's the Union Jackass because he was one of the people who was sharing some of the misinformation as well at the beginning of the week, and his justification for it was that big accounts on Twitter, like Andrew Tate, were sharing it. He's now an elected MP, this is what he wanted, and it's very unbecoming of him to behave as if he's an influencer.
All right, go on, Alex.
Well, mine's Keir Starmer. He's lost control of the country within a month of being Prime Minister, now turning it into an Orwellian nightmare. So I don't know how much higher of an award I can give him.
All right, fair enough. So today's winner of the Union Jackass, I'm afraid it is going to be Sir Keir Starmer for a variety of different reasons. But there we go. Look, thank you very, very much. I wish you all a remarkably good weekend. Obviously, keep it GB News for at least another hour or so, because we've got headliners next. Thank you, thank you, thank you. See you next week.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather coming to you from the Met Office. Things are going to hot up as we go through, particularly the latter part of this weekend, especially in the southeast. But before then, tomorrow will be a bit cloudy and a bit damp for some of us because we are going to see a bit of a frontal wave pushing its way in, and that's going to lead to increasing amounts of cloud as we go through the rest of this evening and overnight. But ahead of that, some clearer skies and